Most people in high school probably know by now, I've always had a passion for sports. And no, I don't mean watching them or keeping up with the stats about the players. I mean actually playing them. I have tried a variety of sports throughout middle school and high school, including soccer, basketball, and even lacrosse. But during this speech, I want to talk about my favorite sport that most of you all are probably already sick and tired of hearing me talk about T-ball. Now listen, I know most of you probably thought I was going to say swimming, but everyone has heard me talk about that, so at this point, that would just be redundant and boring. For those of you who don't know, T-ball is basically baseball, but instead of someone pitching you the ball, you hit it off a plastic pole that is holding the ball. Okay, so now that everyone knows the basics of the game, I will explain to you why T-ball is the best sport ever. Keep in mind, I was never actually professional, but I was pretty close to it. I only played for about 3 to 4 years, but I was a beast in that short time. T-ball taught me how to stand up for myself. My team was full of boys except for one other girl and me, and that other girl never talked, so it forced me at a young age to go out of my comfort zone and make new friends. Now, imagine me as a shy little 4-year-old girl having to make new friends. While all the boys on my team weren't always the nicest, I still learned to have fun with the nice ones. We would all laugh and play games in the dugout, waiting for our turn up to bat. After one game, I still remember walking off the field down at Mockingbird and seeing a girl playing baseball in one of the other fields. I looked at my dad and said, "I'm going to be a professional baseball player when I grow up." Obviously, we all know that didn't turn out as planned, but I still love to think about that story. When people are that young, you think you have your life planned out. You say you want to be a lion tamer and live in a massive house on a lake when asked what you want to be when you grow up. As we grow up, we begin to realize that those options aren't the most realistic. We begin to change what we want to do in our extracurricular activities. We begin to grow up. We grow up and move out, go to college, get a job, get married, have kids, get a house. And then we begin to see ourselves in our kids, and we tell them what we have heard all our lives. Never grow up. Stay young. Never grow up. But how are we supposed to never grow up when our age is something we can't control? Here's what I think. To never grow up, we need to live every day like it's the last. And I know that's super cheesy and I hate cheesy things, but it's true when it comes down to it. When you're older, do you want to be telling your kids about the boring childhood you had? Do you want to say to them that all you did was homework? Or do you want to be able to tell them all the fun you had, while still, of course, getting your schoolwork done? So, while our plans may change, don't forget to have a little fun. Go out with your friends on a Friday night and have fun. Go get dinner with your parents before you grow up. Do things that will make you happy. If that's joining new sports teams, then go ahead and do it. Maybe it's even joining different clubs and making new friends outside of school, or even starting your own club. Do what is going to make you happy. Do things that you want to do before you grow up and regret not doing it. So go out and join the T-ball team, because maybe it's not what you end up doing in the future, but it could be a great memory you hold on to for the rest of your life and even tell your kids about. And even if you're no good at it, unlike me, as long as you are having fun, that's all that matters.
I never thought a $1 sword could have cost me my eye. As I look back upon what I thought would be a traditional family picnic, I realized that a split-second moment changed my entire perspective. My brother and I were running around the park and chasing each other as the smell of my dad's Argentinian barbecue circulated the air. David, my younger brother, swung his newly bought blue and white plastic sword as he jokingly threatened to throw it at me. I looked over to see my dad's perfectly cooked meal, but when I turned back around to face David, a flash of blue and white pierced my eye. I got stabbed the summer before my freshman year. As I stepped into the high school on the first day of school, I prayed and hoped that nobody would notice, but given that I used eye drops 4 times a day and was wearing big black sunglasses, it was difficult for my peers to turn a blind eye. To my dismay, rumors began to spread, and considering that a solar eclipse had happened the day before, many people thought that I had gone blind. I even had a group of sophomore girls stop me in the hallway and say, "You know you weren't supposed to look straight at the sun, right?" But despite these moments, there was a bright spot to my injury. It has given me the best response to the annual first day of school question, "Tell me something about yourself." However, the reality is that my injury has caused several things to not go quite according to plan. When I was called up to the counter on the day of my written driver's test for what would typically be the easiest part, the eye test, I failed. I had waited so long to be able to drive, and thanks to the puncture of a sword, I couldn't even make it past the first step. Nevertheless, the next week I came back, waited an hour in line, and handed the worker a doctor's note. This time I had felt confident in my ability to pass the first step, but I had soon realized that I had failed to study for the actual written test, and thus I failed again. Thankfully, the cycle broke because the next week I was prepared. It may have taken longer than others, but I earned my permit, and 6 months later it only took me one try to pass the actual driving test. Regardless of my rocky start, I had hoped that I would develop a good relationship with driving, and for the first few months everything went smoothly. Even though I avoided highways for months, my skills driving on roads were impeccable. But like most beginner drivers, I got into an accident. Thankfully, nobody was hurt or anything, but the moment my car hit the other vehicle, it was as if I was driving a Mario Kart and I had just hit the player in front of me. I swear it was the best interactive video game until I realized that I had in fact hit a real car. Looking back on how my sudden fluke injury affected my later years, I realized that it had altered my entire perspective. Although it may have seemed like the end of the world at the time, it was essential to not let it overshadow the opportunities I was given later in life. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone to get stabbed, but the one thing my injury and later mistakes have taught me is that I should always persevere to work to find a solution.